For decades, we've all thought Jesus Christ died on the cross of Calvary, but it may come as the shock of the century that we've all been wrong. It turns out one bishop who was a Bible insider, as he was alive during the time of Jesus' disciples, broke his silence that he is completely against that belief.
Jesus was not crucified nor even placed on the cross.
Before his martyr, in his letters, Bishop Ignatius made it known that Jesus was never crucified.
The Bishop of Jerusalem, the box was open, and revealed within it were parts of the cross.
St. Ignatius isn't the only one who has said this. Some Christian groups and sects have the same belief too. But if it's true that Jesus didn't die on the cross, how then did he die? And who was the one crucified? Join us as we go back in time to the days of Bishop Ignatius, what he revealed in his letters, and what he knows about Jesus' true death. Bishop Ignatius of Antioch. While some Christians believe that Jesus was not actually crucified and he was simply raised to heaven, the idea is also present in Islam, where it is mentioned in the Quran. First off, let's talk about something written by an early Christian bishop believed to be a Bible insider. His name was Ignatius, often called Saint Ignatius of Antioch. During his lifetime, he did God's work and lived a righteous life. But unfortunately, he met a tragic end. He was martyred. The plot to kill him was horrible. He was taken to Rome to be thrown to lions. During his journey from Antioch, now located in modern-day Turkey, Ignatius wrote 7 letters. One of these letters talks about the belief held by some that Jesus did not die on the cross. But what is confusing is that he didn't state how Jesus really died before he was resurrected. Ignatius was a popular and well-respected bishop in the 1st century, possibly the 2nd or 3rd bishop after Peter, as some sources suggest. He was born in the early 30s AD, which was around the time Jesus was active. This means Ignatius's life overlapped with the lives of some of Jesus's disciples, such as Jesus's brother James, who led the church in Jerusalem. We will get back to talking about James, but for now, let's focus on the letter written by Ignatius. This letter is included in a book titled Early Christian Writings, published by Penguin Classics. One of Ignatius's letters, known as the Letter to the Magnesians, contains an interesting section. In section 9, Ignatius writes about former followers of old customs who have now found a new hope. Here he refers to people who once followed Judaism but have since become Christians. These individuals have stopped observing the Sabbath and instead now follow the Lord's Day. Ignatius mentions that these people have given up their traditional practice of keeping the Sabbath, a day of rest in Judaism, and have started to structure their lives around the Lord's Day. This transition from old customs to new beliefs reflects a significant change in their religious practice. Ignatius's writings offer a glimpse into the early Christian community's views and the changes they experienced as they embraced their new faith. The Lord's Day in the Christian calendar is Sunday. This is different from the Jewish observance of Saturday. Early Christians moved from following the Jewish calendar to making their own Christian calendar. Ignatius of Antioch, an important person in early Christianity, talked about this change in his writings. He explained that Sunday is the day when life first began for Christians because of Jesus and his death. Ignatius noted that even though some people denied it, Jesus' death is the main mystery that made people become Christians. Ignatius knew about 1st century Christians who said Jesus did not die on the cross. This belief is also found in Islam and is clearly stated in the Quran. In Islamic teachings, it seemed like Jesus was crucified, but God saved him supernaturally from his enemies. This belief matches what is said in the Gospels, where Jesus prays to be saved, and God answers him. Ignatius's writings give important evidence from a key early Christian leader about other Christians who did not believe in the crucifixion as he did. As a well-known Christian bishop, Ignatius strongly disapproved of those who denied Jesus' crucifixion. But the important point here is that these people existed, and Ignatius's writings prove they were part of the early Christian community. It's interesting to know that some early Christians did not believe Jesus was crucified. This belief shows the variety of thoughts and interpretations in the early church. The Quran's account, which says Jesus was not crucified but was saved by God, is similar to what these early Christian dissenters believed. This difference in belief is one of the biggest ironies in the history of Christianity. Ignatius of Antioch, likely the 2nd or 3rd bishop after Peter, is still remembered today in the Orthodox and Catholic churches. In his letter to the Magnesians, especially in section 10, Ignatius makes an interesting statement. He says that claiming to follow Jesus Christ while still following Jewish customs is absurd. Ignatius argues that the Christian faith does not look to Judaism for guidance. Instead, Judaism should look to Christianity. He says that Christianity now includes people from every race and language who believe in God. Ignatius's statement shows the early Christian efforts to create a separate identity from Judaism. This separation was important as the early church tried to define its beliefs and practices. In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus talks about Jewish laws and customs. In Matthew chapter 23, verses 1-4, Jesus criticizes the scribes and Pharisees, who are Jewish leaders. He tells the crowds and his disciples that the scribes and Pharisees sit on Moses' seat, which means they teach the law with authority. Jesus tells his followers to do whatever the scribes and Pharisees teach and to follow it, but not to do as they do because they do not practice what they preach. Jesus says that these Jewish leaders place heavy burdens on people but do not help them. This shows Jesus telling his disciples to follow the Jewish law, which includes the 613 commandments given by God to Moses on Mount Sinai. These commandments are detailed in the book of Exodus and are part of the Torah, which is the divine instruction, teaching, and law given by God to Moses. Jesus told his disciples to listen to those who teach the law, known as the scribes and Pharisees, because they sit on Moses' seat. He said to follow what they teach, but not to do as they do because they are hypocrites. This is the first piece of evidence. In the same chapter, verse 23, Jesus criticizes the Pharisees and scribes, calling them hypocrites. He says they pay tithes on small things like mint, dill, and cumin, but neglect the more important parts of the law, such as justice, mercy, and faith. Jesus emphasized that while they should practice these important parts, they should not neglect the other parts of the law. This means the law must be followed completely. Then in the famous Sermon on the Mount, found in Matthew chapter 5, verse 17, Jesus tells his disciples not to think he came to abolish the law. He insists that not a single part of the law will disappear until heaven and earth pass away. So the law is still to be followed. But Jesus put a renewed emphasis on aspects like mercy, love, and faith, such as loving your neighbor. But the law itself is not abolished. Here's where it gets quite interesting. The irony involving Christians following Judaism. Ignatius of Antioch said that it is absurd to follow Jewish customs while professing Jesus Christ. According to him, the Christian faith does not look to Judaism. Instead, Judaism should look to Christianity, but Jesus himself advocated for the practice of the Torah. The key point here is that Jesus told his followers to respect and follow the Jewish law. He criticized Jewish leaders for being hypocrites and for focusing on minor aspects of the law while neglecting more important ones like justice and mercy. Jesus made it clear that all parts of the law should be followed. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus further emphasized that he did not come to abolish the law. He said that not a single part of it would pass away until everything was fulfilled. This means that the law is still valid and should be followed, but with a focus on mercy, love, and faith. The irony here is that Ignatius strongly believed that Christians should not follow Judaism, while Jesus respected and upheld Jewish law. This creates a significant point of discussion. Jesus, according to the Gospels, saw Jewish law as important and authoritative. He told his followers to respect and follow these laws. Despite this, Ignatius argued that Christianity should not look to Judaism. This creates an interesting contrast between the teachings of Jesus and the interpretations of early Christian leaders like Ignatius. Ignatius's rejection of Jewish customs as part of the Christian faith seems to contradict Jesus' own instructions to his followers. The early Christian community had challenges in defining its identity separate from Judaism. Ignatius's views point out this struggle as the church tried to establish its distinct beliefs. Yet the teachings of Jesus, who followed and respected Jewish law, show how complicated this separation is. Ignatius's writings and his clear stance against following Jewish customs as a Christian give us insight into the early church's efforts to define itself. Despite Jesus' respect for Jewish law, early Christian leaders like Ignatius pushed for a unique Christian identity, separate from Judaism. This historical development shows the evolving nature of early Christian thought and the challenges faced in forming a new religious identity.